When it comes to the game of football, teamwork is critical for success. When it comes to customer service and business, that team approach is just as critical. That's why we're such believers in our friends at Exterior Home Solutions. We have seen firsthand how Exterior Home Solutions has supported our community and treats their customers just like family. So when it comes to roofing, siding, or maybe a complete overhaul, please make Exterior Home Solutions your first and only call.
Welcome into the Volquest Podcast, each and every Tuesday, brought to you by Exterior Home Solutions. They do an incredible job for any home maintenance you may need, whether it's siding, whether it's roofing, whatever it's shingles, whatever you need it. Exterior Home Solutions can get it done for you. Go ahead and check them out at exteriorhomesolutions.com when you have that need. I'm Eric Kane, Austin Price, Rob Lewis, and Brent Hubbs joining you here for the Tuesday Volquest Podcast. And it's kind of a crossover season a little bit, spring football practice. We have a lot of recruiting to get into as well. Baseball's happening, but the pro day just happened last week, guys. And I mean, I don't think it's any secret there's going to be a really nice turnout for Tennessee in the NFL draft, whether that's 2 first-rounders or 4 guys taken within the first 60 picks, whatever the case may be. Josh Heupel's going to have a really, really nice turnout. And Austin, I feel like that is going to help a lot in the world of recruiting because it's going to be appealing to the student athlete to see, hey, these guys develop and I can have a chance to go to the league if I go to Tennessee.
100%. I mean, I remember going back even to like August and talking to some people. And at that point, you got to understand Darnell's still super young. I mean, he doesn't turn 22 until he'll be in camp with an NFL team. And, so technically he could have played 5 full years here and been drafted as a 22-year-old and not turned 23 until fall or August of 24. So back then, I mean, there was a talk like, if he doesn't have a great year, like maybe he comes back another year. And I just kept saying at the time, I'm like, what Glenn Ellerby needs is Darnell to ball, get drafted high, and that's what's playing out. And so that same thing goes for Kelsey Pope, Josh Heupel, everybody involved. If you've coached one of these players, it helps to get them drafted as high as possible because it gives you tangible proof to show to prospects, hey, this guy was not thought that highly of just 2 years ago, and now they got drafted in the first round. Now they got drafted in the second round. I'm with you. I think the chances that Hendon slides into the back end of round 1 or whatever, I mean, again, all that's a positive for Tennessee, and the more eyeballs you can have on it, the better. So, if I'm Josh Heupel, I'm working, all those pro scouts last week just like you did. I'm continuing to get my name out there, and if Tennessee's smart, and I assume they will be, they'll have huge packages ready to go when each player gets drafted to promote what they help produce and then what the players meant to Tennessee.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to do nothing but help you in the world of recruiting. And Brent, the fact that all 32 teams were present on campus for Tennessee's pro day. There's been many years, and you've covered many, many pro days where there's not been a great turnout from scouts, GMs, head coaches, whatever the case may be, at Tennessee's pro day. But all 32 teams were represented on a day where there were several other pro days going on across the country as well. That makes Tennessee as a priority. And again, it falls back on the head coach and the development.
Well, and I mean, I think typically most years you have 32 teams there, but it's who's there representing those 32 teams. Is it a scouting assistant, or is it a regional scout or a head of scout or a head coach, or a position coach, a coordinator, that type of thing. And there was a lot of quality people there. Look, Tennessee's going to hear their name called a lot, Rob, and we can talk about NILs and we can talk about all the other stuff out there. But at the end of the day, kids want to know, do I have a chance to go to the next level if I come through the program? And Tennessee's going to be able to sell that at the end of the month. And I think that's a great thing for Josh Heupel and his football program.
Yeah, and I think AP kind of touched on it when, that all these guys we're talking about in the draft or the upcoming draft were guys who hadn't done much in their careers. I mean, Darnell played. He wasn't bad, but he certainly wasn't, all SEC level. I mean, Jalen Hyatt was nowhere. Cedric Tillman was nowhere. And then it's kind of like what, a little bit like what Rick and his staff did when they first got here. I mean, you weren't getting the 5-star guys. I mean, so you had to develop, sort of the more unheralded guys. And then once you do that, to Austin's point, and you start showing that, hey, you can develop guys, then the 5-star guys are like, hey, Kennedy Chandler's like, man, if they can do that with Jordan Bone, what can they do with me? Or Keon Johnson's like, if they can do that with Grant Williams, what can they do with me? And now I think you're seeing that play out almost exactly the same way with football.
Well, I think too, Rob, it's kind of combination. Like Tennessee became cool. They started winning. They're having success. And now the back end of that is what you just talked about, is producing, getting players in the league. It's kind of the final piece to the puzzle, right? Like you put together this nice big puzzle, but, one or two pieces, fell under the table and you're trying to find them. This is that piece you find under the table that completes the puzzle for Josh Heupel, for the staff, and all that, because Tennessee has become the cool school. One guy told me a couple of years ago who lives and breathes this stuff, if Tennessee can ever become the cool school again, it won't matter a lot of the other outside factors. And Tennessee's become the cool school, which is why they have so many better players on campus. Right now, they're involved with such a much broader board with bigger time talent than at any point in the first couple of years under Josh Heupel. And now you add to the piece of the draft. Inside that, I just think it just builds for what Josh Heupel hopes is an even greater run and an even greater selling point to all the prospects he's trying to recruit.
Well, and I think the other thing too is it's not just who you're going to get drafted; it's the positions that guys are going to get drafted at too. Okay, offensive lineman is a developmental position. All right, we've seen a couple of guys. I've seen a couple of guys in 30 years that might have been ready for the NFL after year 2 in college. But traditionally, those guys are 3-4 year players. Even the great ones, right, are 3 or 4 year players. I mean, maybe Aaron Sears could have gone pretty early, Rob, when he came in. But there's just not been a ton of guys who are just ready, okay? So now you got Jerome Carvin making a little buzz. You've got Darnell Wright, developmental guys. That's a credit to your coaching. Quarterbacks, developmental position. I don't care how talented you are. You've got to develop and you've got to play. Hendon Hooker's name going up the charts there. So it's not just that their name's going to be called. It's that some of the positions that their name's going to be called, which will speak more volumes to the development within the program and the coaching in the program that can carry weight in recruiting. I mean, every quarterback out there should pay attention to what Hendon Hooker's done at Tennessee under Josh Heupel. Every offensive tackle, every offensive lineman out there should take note of the fact of what Glenn Ellerby's done with those guys. That's a big boon and a big help in recruiting, in my opinion, particularly at that offensive line position where it's such a developmental spot.
Austin, you were talking about that last puzzle piece, from the big picture when you look at Tennessee and kind of the rebuild with Josh Heupel and everything, that last puzzle piece being development, NFL draft picks. But for a student athlete looking to, looking to decide where he's going to go and commit to and go play for 3 or 4 years, how big is that puzzle? Because I would assume that right up there with today's era, of course, name, image, and likeness is up there, but of course the development and the opportunity to get to the league and like those two things with the combination of winning, I mean, that those are kind of the 3 headliners right there.
Well, they are. And ultimately, familiarity, comfort, playing time, all that stuff plays. But for a lot of kids, especially the big timers, right? I mean, they're told if you're a top 50 player, you're told you're going to be, an NFL player one day, and they're just trying to get there. Quickest path to the league. How do I get there the fastest? Start making money, like real money, not the NIL money. That's small potatoes, they say, right? Can be in some instances, but in some instances not. But like getting to the league is paramount for these big time players. And it's big time, and it's paramount for honestly every player, but really the ones that are told and groomed and led to believe that, they're a surefire thing to make the league. So, they're going to put their future in the hands of someone who has produced NFL players. And so that's why you need a really nice draft day if you're Josh Heupel. You're in position, to, have that. If it comes to fruition, I think that only helps this 2024 class and beyond.
Because when you're sitting here thinking about it, you've got 5 guys projected in the top 60 or right around that. Of course, you've got Wright that's going to be a first rounder, maybe Jalen Hyatt. Hooker's, depending on which quarterback team that needs a quarterback very much might trade up there at the back end of the first round. But you got Hooker in that conversation. You got Cedric Tillman. You've got Byron Young. And then you have other guys like we mentioned, Jerome Carvin. Princeton Fant's another name. Latrell Bumpus is a name. Jeremy Banks is a name. All those guys, they might get drafted. They might be top, priority free agents after the draft. Any way you spin it, I mean, this is a really, really good showing for Tennessee. So I don't know, Rob, when I sit here and I think about this in terms of what I would be looking for as a student athlete at the next level. Of course, Georgia's been doing it for years, Alabama, LSU. Tennessee's kind of entering that chat now, and I think this year it could go a long way, taking advantage of that 11-win season, Orange Bowl victory, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, the NCAA can run as many commercials as they want about, how many kids are going pro and something besides athletics. And, kids can talk about how important academics are and a fit. I mean, kids want to get to the league. I mean, and I'm not being critical of that. I mean, that's the dream. I mean, most of these guys don't dream about getting a master's in marketing because they had to stay 5 years and, got their master's for free because they redshirted. I mean, they dream about getting out of here in 3 years and getting checks for playing football.
Well, and you want to hear, no offense to those guys who are going to get free agent opportunities or drafted in the back end. You want to see your name called on the first and the second night of the draft when the viewership's there, when the kids are really paying attention to it. That's why this is important. No offense to Velus Jones, who was drafted. No offense to other guys, Theo Jackson. I mean, Theo Jackson's on an NFL roster, right? I mean, but you don't get the publicity out of that if you're not drafted really in those first 2 or 3 rounds. So, if you can get somebody to put a hat on across the stage, or you get a camera feed of a guy in a house getting a phone call, those types of things, that's what resonates. And so that's why this is important, because the number of players projected to be maybe in the top 60 of the draft, I think, is important. I think it's going to be really interesting to see when the wide receiver run starts in the first round, because that's going to dictate a lot about where Jalen Hyatt and where Cedric Tillman go. Not saying that Cedric Tillman's going to be a first-round pick, but when does the run start? Does the run start at pick 9 or 10? Does the run start at 15? That will dictate a lot about where those guys go when the run on wide receivers goes. And the same things for the quarterbacks. What teams are moving up to get a quarterback? What team moves back and says, hey, we want to take a quarterback late in the first round as more of a developmental type guy because maybe the guy we like that we couldn't move up high enough in the draft. And does that fall to Hendon Hooker that way? Going to be a lot of shuffling for those quarterbacks, which is going to create a lot of movement at all positions in the first round and a half of the NFL draft.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna see a lot of quarterbacks go in the top 10, of course, all those mock drafts and everything. But what I love about the draft process and watching it unfold every weekend, every year, is seeing that team like in the, picking in the middle of the second round, might not have had a first round pick or might have had a first round pick and it's come and gone. They address their immediate need. You see that run of quarterbacks, and then you think your quarterback that you want that's still remaining is going to be gone by the time pick 43 comes up or whatever. And you move up to 28, 29, 30, and you take that quarterback. Can that happen for Hendon Hooker? We'll see. And if it does, that'll be at least 2 first-round picks for Tennessee, maybe even the 3rd first-round pick for Tennessee. We'll just have to see.
And I'm interested to see what the Titans do to take this and stay with the NFL team. A lot of talk about them going for quarterback. Man, they'll take.
Is that after an offensive tackle though? Because that's what they're wanting there at the early teens, pick 11 or whatever.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot about quarterback though. And so I just, if they go quarterback, I think they're better off to trade back and draft Hendon Hooker, which again gets Tennessee Vol fans. And again, there's a divide there. Like not every Tennessee Vol fan is a Tennessee Titans fan.
And never will be. I mean, here's the thing that you have to do if you're the Titans or
you can't take Will Levis.
Let's take the Titans. You can if you think he's the best guy out there to help you get to the Super Bowl. You're not winning it's not about a popularity contest, because here's what you know. If you're good, they'll come. Now, would I take Will Levis? Absolutely not. I'm on record to tell you where I think about Will Levis is. I wouldn't take Anthony Richardson. but I'm not in an NFL front office or a scouting department, a head coach, or all those. What I'm saying is you can't win without a guy who can be your franchise quarterback for you, regardless of where he is from. And I get it. I mean,
No.
Would they be better off if they had a Tennessee guy who was a really good quarterback? Sure. But if you're the Titans and you're looking at it from the NFL perspective, if you think that this quarterback is the future for you and you got the room and the ability to trade up and go get it, you can't sit there and go, well, we're going to pass on him at 6 so we can trade back and take the Tennessee guy at 18 so the state likes us better.
No. I agree with that. But what I'm saying, though, is it's kind of like that high school team that has a senior quarterback and a freshman quarterback, and they're really the same. Who you rolling with? I'm going to go with the guy that I can build for the next 4 years. In this instance, it's not the age thing. It's if they're apples to apples in your eyes. And again, I know Tennessee fans are not going to say they're apples to apples. But if you're the Titans and they're apples to apples, I would take Hendon Hooker.
Sure. But I don't think anybody I'm not seeing Hendon Hooker in the top 10 of mock drafts. So I don't think anybody in the league is saying Hendon Hooker and Richardson or Shroud or those guys are apples to apples. I'm not saying I agree with that, but looking at the mocks, I'm not seeing people say that. Now, there's one guy who's come out and said, top 5 pick, would have been the number 1 overall pick if he hadn't torn his ACL. I'm not sure about that, but you look at most mocks, it doesn't appear like right now a lot of people see apples to apples. Now, I've said this, Hendon Hooker's created more buzz than anybody has at the quarterback position, Rob, and it's unbelievable for a guy who's not throwing a football to have the buzz he has right now to not throw the football this offseason is something you typically don't see in the draft process.
Yeah, he's obviously knocking interviews out of the park, which is not something that I think surprises anybody right here. But I guess I'm surprised at how much just that has been able to move the needle for him, when he's not been able to work out. I mean, I thought he would hit a home run, when he sits in the room with a team's front office for, half an hour or whatever. But pretty clearly, NFL types have been impressed with what they've seen from him. I guess in what they project for him as a leader, locker room presence, just, face of a franchise.
Yeah. And Austin, to your point, and I think the point you're saying too, it only takes the one team, right? One team seeing apples to apples. That's all it takes. It doesn't matter. It could be a team picking 8th. It could be a team picking 88th. It's just whichever team likes you. I mean, you look at the Seahawks, for example, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks. How long are they going to ride with Geno Smith as their guy? Right? Do they get somebody to groom? They've got as much wiggle room in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft as anybody, because you're talking about trading and moving around. You can do whatever you want to if you're the Seahawks with the amount of picks you have out there. So I think there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing and shuffling going on, which is going to be make a fascinating first couple of rounds of this draft.
You go back to Darrell Taylor. The Seahawks, they fell in love with Darrell Taylor. He went much higher than a lot of people projected in that draft because that one team said, this is our guy. We think he can be a dude for us. And that could be Jalen Hyatt going 17 instead of 33.
It could be Hendon Hooker.
It could be Hendon Hooker. It could be Byron Young to keep the same parallel with Darrell Taylor. And it could be, it could be Darnell instead of going 18, he goes 9.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like as your point and my point too, is it just takes one to fall in love with you. And it's kind of like NIL. Your value is whatever one team says it is.
That's
and
exactly
that same thing goes with the NFL draft. It's just money. It's your draft.
And this is a critical 10 days, Eric, when you look at it for a lot of guys. Like Darnell Wright's not going to work out anymore, right? The tape's the tape, the pro day's the pro day, the combine's the combine. But he's going to travel the country and sit in the offices of offensive line coaches, offensive coordinators, head coaches, GMs, and those types of things. This is money-making time here, because this is when somebody really falls in love with you, right? Like everybody's got a first-round grade on Darnell Wright from a talent standpoint.
No.
Now it's who wants to date you. Who do you decide? Who do you convince to date you? Basically, in these meetings is what the course of the next week and a half is about. I mean, Hendon Hooker was in the complex on Monday. when they're who knows who he was going to work or who he was going to talk to. I'm sure he came in for some rehab, but he's seeing a lot of people, just a lot of moving and shaking going on.
Yeah, we played that clip a while ago. It was back, right after the NFL Combine of Darnell Wright being asked about the difference in blocking guys like Will Anderson and then guys like B.J. Ojulari. And I loved his answer so much. It's just a football dude breaking it down, right, for the average fan to kind of like, okay, I understand that. He talks like that in those front office meetings. A lot of people are going to want to date him for sure. So, Hendon Hooker too.
He was on the Nation Sunday night, and he has never done a better interview than what he did on Sunday night on the Nation. I thought Austin. I thought he was casual, but he wasn't silly. It wasn't goofy. His answers were complete. They weren't long and rambling. He's a guy who's clearly worked on it, and is a guy who's gotten more comfortable getting interviewed and talked to by people.
Yeah, again, comfortability is a big deal, and I'll just go back to what you just said a second ago. Just like Rob Lewis on the dance floor, baby. A lot of moving and shaking.
Lots of moving and shaking. Not Jimmy Hunt's moving and shaking, but a lot of moving and shaking.
Jimmy hung up the dance shoes.
No, he'll never hang up.
Hey, now that he's retired, he'll be dancing more.
They weren't hung up last Thursday night.
It's because he still had to go to work on Friday.
You guys brought up the Seahawks with Hooker, and we'll move on here in just a second. But the Seahawks, seriously, with Geno Smith, NFL Comeback Player of the Year, he signed a new contract this offseason. If my memory serves me correct, I believe it's a 3-year deal, but Seattle has an out after year 2, I believe. So anyway, it's been a trendy pick that Seattle will take a quarterback, obviously not in that top 10. Hooker falls in line there. I think that'd be a great stopping point. Or if it's apples to, comparing apples and oranges here, a team like Tennessee, just using it as an example, picking 11th, if those quarterbacks, say you value Anthony Richardson and Hendon Hooker the same, just picking 2 quarterbacks out here, Richardson's gone at 9 or whatever, you take your tackle at 11, which is what you were wanting to do. It's one of your biggest needs. Then you can maybe go back up and get your guy at the end of the first round in Hendon Hooker. So we'll see.
I'm telling you, nobody's phone's going to ring more than the Seattle Seahawks. They got the 5th pick, the 20th pick, the 37th pick, and the 52nd pick. They got 5 picks in the top 52 of the NFL draft. You want to move and shake and move around? They could take 5 and they could move to 10, or they could move to 11, get another 2nd round pick out of that, or a 3rd round pick out of it. They have more leverage than anybody in the first 2 rounds when you look at where they pick and the number of picks that they have.
Should be exciting. That's coming up later at the end of this month, the NFL draft. And hopefully it'll help Tennessee out in the recruiting front. Quickly, Austin, we got Matt Ray's thoughts on the rewind, but obviously you were there. You covered a big-time recruiting day for Tennessee on Saturday. How'd you think the Vols did with some of those top targets on campus?
Well, I just go back to what I was saying a second ago. It just feels like they just have a better quality of player coming to campus right now. And the board is bigger. A year ago, you felt like, okay, if they miss on one of their top 2 linebackers, or top 2 receivers or top 2 DBs, like there was going to be either a drastic fall off or there just wasn't much behind it. Heck, man, the DBs that Tennessee's in on, and you could miss on several of them and still end up with a really good DB class. Same thing with linebacker, wide receiver. Tight end. That's a perfect example. It just feels like that they have a different quality of player coming to campus right now, and that's an interesting thing for me to see, just to kind of see how they've kind of become the cool school, to put it in the terms of he who shall not be named. They've become the cool school, and kids are looking at Tennessee in a different light than they looked at them 2 years ago. And the truth be told, had Tennessee been the cool school 2 years ago, some of those in-state kids that went elsewhere probably end up at Tennessee. But at that point, Tennessee had that black cloud over them, and it just felt different. And right now, it's the opposite.
Who did Tennessee help themselves out with the most? Maybe 1-2 players over the weekend.
Well, I think Tennessee helped themselves out with Jaden Riddell. I really do. I feel like Tennessee's in a pretty good spot there. Again, long way to go. You're again beating. If you're getting Jaden Riddell, you're beating out Georgia, Alabama. Who's who, right? But I think they did a really nice job with him this weekend. I thought Tennessee, did enough to get Brandon Baker to campus for an official visit, offensive tackle out of Mater Dei. I think Tennessee did a nice job, with the running back, Bryson Russell. I think they did a really nice job with, Williams. Now, I've got to learn this kid's last name because I butcher it so bad, but Williams I forgot.
The number one defensive lineman in the country.
That's the easiest way to say it.
I was going to say, Hub said it perfectly on the rewind the other night.
Or whatever. Either way, Tennessee has obviously done a nice job with him and has showed him enough to get him back here for an official visit this summer. And so, I continue to think Tennessee has positioned themselves well. Obviously Shamar Arnaud, who's a 2025 DB, is going to decide later this week. Tennessee is, got a lot of momentum there. And, I just feel like Tennessee did a really nice job the last 2 weekends, but specifically this weekend in general, of getting kids here. And of course, Monday they had Mike Matthews here. They had, Nye Carr here. They had, the Michael kid here. A really nice group of kids here on Monday as well. And you expect to see people like, George McIntyre, quarterback out of Nashville, 2025. He'll make it to, campus at some point in the next, 10 days or so. He's not going to be here for the spring game, but he'll be here for a practice at some point, either later this week or early next week. And so, Tennessee's done a really good job, and they continue to do so. Even with guys like Caleb Odom, who, again, is a tight end that Tennessee likes out of Carrollton, Georgia. And they're in the mix for. He may be down the list just because, Jaden Riddell and Jonathan Eccles and Max LeBlanc. The biggest question is guys going elsewhere, is how did LeBlanc like Ohio State? Because they're the one team that I think could potentially kind of pick up LeBlanc over Tennessee. What's his reaction leaving Ohio State this past weekend?
Well, remember this too about LeBlanc. He's not a native of Tennessee.
Canadian.
He's Canadian. So weather's not a big deal. Loyalty to the state's not as big of a deal there. It's a lot closer to Ohio State for family than it is to Knoxville, Tennessee. That's something that you have to deal with there. That's a little bit different for a quote in-state kid, because he is not your normal in-state kid.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like the tight end from Middle Tennessee that went to Alabama, signed with Alabama in this past class. He's from Chicago. He only moved down here to be able to play his junior year because of the COVID, closures up in Illinois as far as being able to play athletics. So, ultimately, not every in-state kid is created equal, right? Because they're not from here. Like Boo Carter, Tennessee did a nice job with him this weekend. Boo's going to take visits in June, decide in July. Feel like Tennessee's got a lot of momentum there. But again, the longer the kids let it play out, they leave wiggle room for moving around and other schools to get some momentum.
It is transfer portal season for college basketball. I want to get some thoughts from Rob Lewis on where Tennessee stands with some guys here in just one moment. March Madness, it's over. It's kind of sad, but you can still shoot your shot over at MyBookie and score big today. Whether you're filling out multiple brackets next year, betting on whatever the case may be, you can turn game day into payday over at MyBookie. Getting started is super simple. Just go to the website online, make your first deposit, and use the promo code Volquest over at mybookie.com. That is promo code Volquest, VOLQUEST, to claim some extra money on top of your initial deposit, with hundreds of thousands in prizes for March Madness every single year, plus weekly blackjack tournaments still going on right now. You can turn your game day into payday. That is at MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. And as always, a big shout out to Exterior Home Solutions, proud title sponsor of the Volquest Podcast. 865-524-5888 for a free estimate. That is Exterior Homes.
Life happens, and damage to your home can be extremely stressful. That's why it's important to find someone who offers efficient, quality work with financing options. Exterior Home Solutions, they value not only family, but community. And they're who I call when life happens, and you should too.
A lot's happening right now in the world of college basketball. The transfer portal is open. We're already seeing a whole lot of movement. Tennessee had Olivier Cumwa that decided to enter his name in the transfer portal. Rob Lewis, your thoughts on that, the overall end game there, and the interest level for Tennessee hosting some guys out of the transfer portal here this week?
Starting with Olivier, I mean, I think a lot of people surprised by that one, the coaching staff included. I mean, I don't think anybody anticipated Olivier, or I wouldn't say anybody, but I would say I don't believe that Tennessee anticipated Olivier returning. I think just about everybody felt like he was going to, give it a go overseas, and obviously try to make a team here and probably play summer league for somebody in the NBA, but end up making some money in Europe next year. Instead, I think he's trying to, in my opinion, see if he can hit, an NIL windfall with somebody in the NCAA. Don't believe that path was available to him in Knoxville. But, good luck to him. I think Tennessee was caught off guard that he might consider playing somewhere else next year. But, I don't think that they were anticipating that he was going to be back. As for the guys that Tennessee is interested in, tons of names out there. And I think Tennessee is interested in a lot of guys. Now we sit back and find out who was interested in Tennessee. Obviously, the kid transferred out of Harvard, Chris Ledlam, is interested enough in Tennessee to where he's already set up an official visit, but that is not until April 14th, so a couple weeks. A lot could happen there. Tennessee looking into Quez Glover, who a lot of fans will remember that name from Bearden High School. Signed with Florida, didn't play a lot in 2 years, transferred to Samford, where he has been a big-time player in the Southern Conference, averaged 19 points this last year. Tennessee checking into that. Obviously, I think there would be some interest on his end, but Tennessee doing some due diligence. Caleb Love from North Carolina is another name that has been out there that we think Tennessee would certainly be interested in. And Davian McKnight from Western Kentucky is a guy that they have reached out to. And those are four. I mean, again, I think there's a lot more guys than that out there that Tennessee has reached out to and is at least trying to see what gauge their interest. But right now, those are four that I think Tennessee is really serious about. And again, can't stress enough what kind of a factor NIL is going to be in decisions for transfers. And that's a huge part of it. Almost all these guys who are moving around with the intent to get paid.
What about Mac McClung?
And Rob, we're still waiting on the rest of those seniors, right?
Yeah, and this is, I spoke with somebody about it on Saturday and did not hear the past couple of days, but as of Saturday, Santiago, Josiah still kind of mulling what they were going to do. And again, just as with transfers, I think if either one of those guys decides to come back, I think NIL opportunities would be a significant part of their decision. And I'm not sure what's out there.
Well, and for Santi, because he's a foreign kid, he can't make money in NIL unless he is in his home country. So, or not in the continental United States. So, like if he went to Germany on a trip, he could make NIL money there, but he cannot make money in Knoxville, Tennessee. Like he has to go outside the U.S. So if he went home, and was there in Uruguay, then he could do a deal and make however much, right? But he can't do it here. So he has to physically leave the country, and all of them do, to be able to get that done.
Or if Tennessee took a trip this summer, like an exhibition tour, which I think is a very strong possibility.
Yeah. That rule makes a lot of sense.
Makes total sense, right? I mean, looking out for those college athletes, baby.
Good grief. What a man. I mean, really? Okay. Want to give everybody equal opportunities, want to level playing field. Okay. Whatever.
We should do the same with Kane. To get a paycheck every month, he should have to go back to Jefferson City, and then you'll wire him the money.
Just put it in the mail, Brent. As long as that check's in the mail somewhere, I literally don't care.
I mean,
Send it to my mom's house. She'll keep them for me.
But I mean, you're telling me that a guy who's been the face of your program shouldn't have the opportunity to make money as the face of your program, and he can't do it because he's not from here. He's not from the States. That's just goofy. I mean, I'm sorry.
How much longer until that gets taken to court?
I mean, why is it not off the books now? Why was it ever on the books to begin with? That's just a goofy rule and a long line of goofiness by the National Collegiate Athletic Association.
Put it on the list, Rob. The pecking order here, real quick. I mean, it's still shooter, point guard, big man. I mean, what's kind of the pecking order?
I think they'd like. I mean, because this is a Kai situation, and you just don't know, when he's going to be back, how quick he's going to, how long before he's going to be 100%. I think point guard, is somebody, or at least combo guard, somebody that can be a ball handler, is probably a priority. And obviously with the fact that they're bringing Ledlam in on an official visit, they want help in the post, even though he's the 6'6", 6'7", he's not going to bring a lot of size. He is a low post player, banger, older guy.
Is Quez Glover, if they went that route, would he have 2 years left because of the COVID year?
My understanding is he would be a grad transfer, AP with one to go.
Yeah, but I think that doesn't include the COVID year.
Yeah, but the COVID guys also kind of get your numbers now. It's not a freebie.
No, I get that, but I mean, like my point is that if he was good in year one, then you might want to bring him back for year two.
I think that's a possibility. AP, I'd have to study it before I said definitively yes, that's his situation.
Last thing I want to hit on here as we conclude the Volquest podcast here on a Tuesday. Tennessee baseball goes down to LSU and plays a really, really tightly contested series. Doesn't squeak one out on Saturday, game 3. Score 10 runs in the first 2 innings, and kind of bulldoze their way to a 14-7 win to come home not empty-handed. Overall, Tennessee, what are your thoughts, AP, on Tennessee baseball this past weekend? Not quitting when things certainly were self-imploding at times on Thursday and Friday, but finding a way to get a win over the top-ranked team in the country and come back during this brutal stretch.
Yeah, I thought that they really played well. I know they lost the series, but I thought there was big time growth from Missouri to A&M to LSU. Now they still got their issues. Hubs and I were sitting here laughing Saturday during game 3. 5 of the first 6 out of the total 7 runs you gave up by Drew Beam were unearned. They're second in the conference in unearned runs, Hubs. The pitching staff was already kind of had all the kind of focus on them because of how good they were last year, and the offense wasn't great, so they even had more pressure early on. Double that and triple that when you start making error and unforced stuff, like getting picked off at first base, and then the next guy hits a solo shot instead of a 2-run shot. All these things add up, but I thought on the whole, they were really competitive. They were really solid at LSU. And I think this weekend against Florida is a real chance to kind of cement the growth in this baseball team before they head to Arkansas next week.
I think so too. I wrote about it. We talked about it a lot. Tennessee makes outs on the base paths. Tennessee makes errors in the field. It's frustrating. Tennessee flat out gave the game away on Thursday. Just said, hey, LSU, it's yours, take it. It was pathetic, to be completely honest with you. What happened there in the 8th inning.
I thought it was worse for Friday.
Yeah, Friday had its issues as well.
Yeah, the 8th inning was bad.
Yeah.
The 8th inning Friday or Thursday night was bad.
Yeah. But again, you fought, you scratched, you clawed, you found a way. And to your point, Austin, about them seeing the growth, you're seeing it in individual at-bats too.
Yeah.
Guys are much better at the plate right now and seeing more pitches and being more selective. And sure, you're going to strike out and get outs and everything. Griffin Merritt's slumping right now. That stuff like that happens, but the at-bats are getting better and you're stringing those consistently along. So if 1 or 2 plays, Brent, were differently this weekend, Tennessee could have swept the best team in the country right now. It didn't happen that way. Tennessee has its issues and it contributed to a pair of losses, but I wrote this in the 3-2-1 earlier this week. Tennessee proved to me this week that they can beat anybody in the country. I wrote still, but I guess it's not really still because it's kind of a brand new lineup. They can beat anybody in the country. They can hang with anybody in the country, but they got to stop beating themselves.
Well, they've got to do the little things because they're going to be in tight ball games. We've said this for weeks. They're going to be in 4-2 ball games, 3-2 ball games. Can they hold a lead? Can they do the little things to help themselves hold the lead? Let's make a routine play in the 8th inning in a series opener to extend that game. That's not dropping fly balls, pop-ups in the infield. That's communicating the right way. I mean, they have to do the little things. A year ago, they did not have to be really good at the little things because they could hit it so big. It's kind of like your football team. It's okay to go negative rushing yards on first and second down when you can throw it over somebody's head on 3rd and 13, right? And you get it all back. This team doesn't have that ability to do that consistently. They have got to do the little things to win low-scoring games because they're not going to be in a ton of 15, 11 baseball games.
I'll tell you one thing that I've really been impressed by, and one thing that I think is going to help this team, especially once they get to the SEC tournament, once they get to the regionals, super regionals, if they make it that far, and then potentially in Omaha if they make it that far, is the trio of Halverson, Lindsey, and Cam Sewell.
Yep.
As guys who are long relievers or potential off-ball, odd-day starters in those tournament situations is going to be huge because they are deep at that spot. And if they can just get there and the hitting stays kind of where it's at or gets a little better from here, that's where this team has a real shot, in my opinion. Because they have those three guys that can come in, and it means that Dolander, Burns, and Beam don't have to pitch 7 innings. They don't have to pitch 6 innings even. If they can get 4 to 5 innings, then you can go to those long relievers, and they have some really good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they're big leaguers. Lindsey and Halverson are big leaguers. Tony Vitello says it all the time. And you look at it like, Dolander went 4 2/3 on Thursday. Burns went 3 1/3 on Friday. Beam went 4 on Saturday. And in those first 2 games, you had 2 pitchers in each of the first 2 games. It was Dolander, Halverson. It was Burns, Lindsey. I mean, your bullpen should have been in shreds by the time you got into Game 3, but it wasn't. It's really unfair because they could start a lot of places around the country, and you're right. Even in the SEC tournament, like you saw Sewell, pitch the game-clinching, SEC tournament title last year, and that's a spot for them to make starts as well. So, fix the little things because not every game is going to be like Game 3 to where your defense was bad. You give up 4 runs in an inning, but you already scored 10 runs on the scoreboard, so you were able to withstand it. That's not going to happen every single game. So it was a good weekend overall. I thought they showed a lot, and a couple of plays here and there from coming back with a series win, potentially a series sweep against a really, really good team in LSU. But doesn't get any easier. Hosting Florida this weekend, on the road to Arkansas, coming back for Vanderbilt. That is life in the SEC. It is Exterior Home Solutions. Give them a free estimate. For a free estimate, give them a call today at 865-524-5888. That is Exterior Home Solutions. You can check them out online, exteriorhomesolutions.com as well, for any needs you have to upgrade your home. And it's Exterior Home Solutions, proud title sponsor of the Volquest Podcast. For Austin Price, Rob Lewis, Brent Hubbs, I am Eric Kane. Appreciate you guys, as always, for checking us out at Volquest.com, subscribing to Volquest on the YouTube channel, and staying dialed in to the Volquest Podcast each and every Tuesday right here at Volquest.com.